certainly was a Brexity flavour to it, and that's nice to hear. I think a lot of viewers might think we didn't know that European law still was supreme over British law, so time to get a move on that one. Bonfire of EU red tape, perhaps people think I've heard that before, and that's the danger, really. I particularly, my ears pricked up on the British Bill of Rights, because many of us regard subservience to the European Court of Human Rights as sort of Brexit Part 2. I know Mr Farage takes that view. Dominic Raab seems to think that there's a sort of halfway house of reform on this, where you tweak and water down the powers of the Strasbourg court, and you can contain judicial activism and the sway of this dimension of Europe over Britain just by doing some tweaks. Well, to many of us, again, that will sort of prick memories of when the Tories were always going to reform the European Union. So we'd be, a nation state, sovereign, etc., etc. And it didn't prove compatible, and a bigger change was necessary. So, proof of the pudding will be in the eating. The other thing that really caught my attention was the protest bill, which doesn't threaten the right to protest, but zones in on the right to disrupt and the right to attack key bits of infrastructure. And I think that will be very widely supported.
Yeah, some other bits and bobs were apparently dropped, such as banning the import of foie gras and so forth. It seemed to me a Queen's speech that laid out an agenda of a true blue Conservative Party, rather than some of the wishy-washy sort of newfangled concepts we've heard eking out of the party over previous months.
Yeah, but you have to ask how much of this is packaging. For instance, there's a bill called energy security, which if you read all the way through it was also about achieving climate change goals. So they put a new label on the same box there, and I'm someone who thinks that climate change is a problem, and it will be nice to get to sort of very low carbon emissions, but let's keep a sense of proportion. And someone indeed who thinks energy security and affordability is more important. But really what the government's done there is just change the label on the same policy. So again, you have to look with a bit of perhaps in my case, a cynical eye on that. But I do think, there's stuff on crime. There's loads of cost of living economics focus, which clearly the government's picking up in polls is now easily the number one consideration. There were sort of promises to do more on the cost of living if that proves necessary. Well, I can tell you it's going to prove necessary, and how that will be compatible with restoring the national finances to health. Again, that's a very tricky problem for Rishi Sunak to battle with.